Somewhere in the Blue Ridge Mountains, a storm is breaking trees, the kind of storm that washes whole roads off the map, the kind that finds you before you find shelter. Through the rain, a young woman walks, a child on her back, a husky, 3 steps ahead, his white fur turned the color of mud, his eyes the color of glacier water. They have been walking for 3 days. They have nowhere left to go. She does not know it yet, but somewhere in the mountain, in front of her, behind the roots of a tree, older than any law on the books, there is a door no map shows, a door that has been waiting. For 14 years, an old woman in a country store at the bottom of that road has kept a promise about it. For 14 years, the porch light has stayed on. Tonight, the dog stops. His ears come up. His head turns towards something only he can see. The rain came sideways that third night. Not the kind of rain that falls, the kind that hunts, the kind that finds every gap in your jacket, every crack in your boots, every promise you ever made yourself about being strong. I had stopped feeling my fingers around midnight. Junie was on my back, 8 years old, 42 pounds of bone and breath, and the only reason my legs still moved. Her cheek pressed against my neck, her breath uneven, hot, too hot, because she had a fever, because of course she did, because the universe wasn't done with us yet. I told myself she was just sleeping. I told myself the heat I felt was just my own body burning up, trying to keep us both alive. I told myself a lot of things in those mountains. None of them were true. Cody walked 3 feet ahead of me, tail down, ears flat against his skull. The white of his coat was gone. Mud had eaten it. Pine needles stuck to his fur like little brown nails. He looked back every few seconds to check, to count us. 1, 2, 3. Still here, Cody. Still here. My name is Adeline Locke. 22 years old. 3 months ago, I worked the closing shift at a diner off Route 70. I had a checking account with $411 in it, a studio apartment with a leaky radiator, a library card, a father who called every Sunday, a mother who sent dried apricots in the mail because she thought I didn't eat enough fruit. I had all of that. And then I didn't. A semi-truck driver fell asleep at the wheel just outside Asheville. That's the sentence. That's the whole sentence. People always want the long version. There isn't one. A man fell asleep. My parents didn't. My parents were awake. My parents saw it coming. I think about that sometimes. I shouldn't, but I do. The trees in front of me were going black. Not from night, from something else. Something my eyes were doing. Little holes opening up in the world. Addie, Junie's voice, small, scratched. I'm here, Bug. I'm cold. I know. I'm really cold. I know, baby. My head hurts. I stopped walking. I don't remember deciding to stop. My legs just gave out under me, and I went down on one knee in the mud, and Cody was at my face in less than a second. Wet nose, warm breath, eyes that held mine like he was trying to tell me something. Get up, girl. Junie slid off my back. I caught her. I sat her on a rock that wasn't a rock. It was a root, the root of something massive. I looked up. A tree that had no business being that big. It was the kind of tree you read about in books your grandmother used to keep on the shelf. The kind of tree people carved their names into and then died, and the tree just kept on. Its trunk was wider than my old apartment. Its roots reached down the slope like the fingers of a hand that had been buried alive, and Cody was standing on those roots, frozen, staring at something I couldn't see. Cody, he didn't move. Cody, baby, come on. We have to keep walking. He didn't move. Cody. His head turned, just his head. His eyes met mine, and for a second I thought of my father. I thought of my father standing in the doorway of our kitchen with this same dog at his feet. I thought of my father saying, "He'll always know where to go, Addie. Trust him. Dogs know things people don't." I had laughed at him. I had laughed at my dad. Many times, over many things, I would give every year of my remaining life to laugh at him about one more thing. "Okay," I whispered. "Okay, Cody, show me." He turned. He walked between two of those massive roots. He disappeared. I picked up Junie. She weighed nothing now. Or maybe I weighed nothing. Maybe we were both ghosts and I just hadn't gotten the memo. I followed the dog into the side of the mountain. The opening was narrow, so narrow I had to turn sideways and hold Junie against my chest and shuffle through with my back scraping wet stone. Water ran down the rocks like the mountain was crying. My boots slipped. I caught myself. I kept going, and then the rain stopped. Just like that. One step I was wet. The next step I was dry. The sound changed. The storm became distant, far away, like a memory of a storm, like someone had closed a door behind us. I stood there, breathing, just breathing. Junie lifted her head. "Addie, what? Where are we?" "I don't know, baby." "Is it a cave?" "I think so." "Are there bears?" "No bears." "How do you know?" I didn't, but Cody had walked deeper into the dark, and his tail was up. His tail was up for the first time in 3 days. And if my father had taught me anything in 22 years of being on this earth, it was that you trust the tail. You trust the tail. I clicked on my flashlight. The battery had maybe an hour left in it, maybe less. I had been rationing it like sugar in wartime. The beam moved across stone, and then it stopped moving, because my hand had stopped working, because what I was looking at could not possibly be there. A house, a wooden house, in a cave, under a mountain, in the middle of a national forest where there was not supposed to be anything but trees and bears and the slow, patient indifference of nature. A house, with a porch, with shutters, with a stone chimney that ran up into the dark of the cave ceiling and disappeared. The wood was dark, aged, the kind of brown that takes 100 winters to make. The roof was covered in moss. The windows were thick with dust, but the windows were not broken, and the door was closed. And someone had built this. Someone had built a whole house inside a mountain with their hands. For a reason, I forgot to breathe. "Addie," Junie's voice in my ear. "Addie, is that real?" "I don't know. It looks real." "I know. Is somebody in it?" I didn't answer, because I didn't know, because if there was somebody in it, we had bigger problems than the rain. Cody was already on the porch. He was already on the porch, and he was sitting, just sitting, the way he used to sit on the porch of our old house in Burnsville, waiting for my mother to come home from her shift at the hospital. Patient, tail thumping, waiting. He looked back at me, and I swear to God, in that moment, I knew the way you know when somebody is about to call you, the way you know when the bread is done, the way you know when somebody loves you, and they haven't said it yet, but you know. This place wasn't going to hurt us. This place had been waiting for us, which was crazy, which was insane, which was the kind of thought that creeps in when a person hasn't slept in 3 days and her little sister is burning up and her dead father's dog is sitting on the porch of an impossible house under a mountain. So I shook it off. I told myself I was hallucinating. I told myself a lot of things, and I walked toward the porch. The wood didn't creak the way old wood should creak. It held, firm, even. I shifted Junie onto my hip. I reached for the door. I hesitated. because there was a part of me that didn't want to know. There was a part of me that wanted the dream to stay a dream a little longer, because once I opened that door, one of two things would happen. Either there would be somebody inside and we would have to leave, or there would be nobody inside and we would have to stay. Both terrified me. I turned the handle. The door opened. Inward. Easy. Like it had been waiting. The smell hit me first. Not mold, not rot, not the smell of an abandoned place. The smell of dry herbs. The smell of old smoke long since cold. The smell of cedar. The smell of a house that had been left, but left carefully. Left the way a mother folds a blanket at the foot of a bed before she goes. Left for someone. Cody walked in, right past me, right into the dark, like he had been there before. I followed. I shone the flashlight around. A room, a real room, wood floor, wood walls, a round braided rug in the center, a stone fireplace big enough for me to stand inside, a kitchen at the back, a wooden table with 2 chairs and a third one tipped on its side, as if someone had stood up too quickly and never come back. And on the mantle, on the stone mantle above the fireplace, a photograph, black and white, in a wooden frame, curled at the edges. I crossed the room, I picked it up, and my hands started to shake, because in the photograph there was a man, older, maybe 50, standing in front of this same house, standing on this same porch, smiling, and at his feet was a husky, white and gray, blue eyes, ears at attention, a husky who looked exactly like Cody. Addie, yeah, why is your face like that? My face is fine. Your face is not fine. I put the photograph back, face down. I don't know why. I just couldn't look at it anymore. I turned around. Cody was lying in front of the cold fireplace, curled, eyes closed, as if he had been doing it for years. Junie was watching me. "Can we stay here tonight?" she whispered. "Yes, baby. Just tonight. We'll see." "Okay." She closed her eyes against my shoulder, and for the first time in 3 days, she stopped shivering. I want to tell you that I sat down in that wooden chair and cried. I didn't have any crying left. I had used it all in the lawyer's office 8 weeks ago, in a fluorescent lit room with a poinsettia on the desk, even though it was September, across from a woman in a navy blazer who told me my parents had not left a formal will, and that under North Carolina law, since I was over 18, I had no automatic claim to be Junie's guardian, which, sure, fine. Except my Aunt Cordelia did have a claim, and Aunt Cordelia lived in a condominium in Charlotte with white carpet, and Aunt Cordelia did not want me. Aunt Cordelia had made that clear when I was 9, when I broke a porcelain cat in her sunroom, and she said in a voice my father didn't know she could make, "That girl will never be welcome in my home again." She was a woman of her word. "I'll take Junie," she said in the lawyer's office, hands folded, lipstick perfect. "I have always been fond of June. I am, of course, unable to take Adeline." The lawyer looked at me. The lawyer looked at Aunt Cordelia. The lawyer looked at the poinsettia. "Miss Locke," the lawyer said gently, "you are 22. You have no income. You have no established residence. You cannot reasonably contest a familial guardianship claim." I stared at her. "You're telling me to give my sister away." "I'm telling you what the law says. My father's body is in a refrigerator, and you're telling me to give my sister away." She didn't answer that. She didn't have an answer. I stood up. I walked across the office. I crouched down in front of Aunt Cordelia, and I looked her in the eye, and I said the only thing I had left. You can have the house, you can have the cars, you can have the dishes, you can have every dime in their accounts. I want one thing." She raised an eyebrow. "Junie," I said. "Adeline. Just Junie. Adeline. Be reasonable." "I am being reasonable. You said it yourself. You don't want me, so don't take me. Just let me have her. That child needs stability, white carpet, a piano, private school. You can't provide that on a waitress salary. I can love her. Love is not a school district, Adeline." She said that. She actually said that. I stood up. I left. I walked all 6 blocks back to my apartment in heels because I couldn't afford the bus that day. And when I got home, Junie was on the floor with Cody, coloring, and she looked up at me and she said, "Addie, are you crying?" And I said no, and I was. That night I packed a bag. That was 8 weeks ago. 3 weeks ago, my landlord taped a notice to my door. 3 days ago, I bought us bus tickets to a town called Spruce Pine because I had heard once that there was wilderness up there, because I had a half-cocked plan about disappearing, about staying lost long enough that the courts couldn't find Junie, about being a fugitive for love. Stupid, stupid girl. But here's the thing I keep coming back to. If I had not been a stupid girl, if I had not bought those bus tickets, if I had not walked into the woods with my 8-year-old sister and my dead father's dog, if I had not gotten lost, if the storm had not come, if Cody had not stopped, then I would not have found this house, and the man in the photograph would still be smiling at no one. I don't know what that means yet, but I'm starting to think it means something. I built a fire that first night. There was wood already stacked by the hearth, dry, split, old but good. I struck a match from the box in my coat pocket. 3 matches left. I used 1, 2 left. I made it count. The flame caught, and the room came alive. Orange light crawled up the wooden walls. The shadows pulled back into the corners and stayed there. The cold lifted off the floor and floated up into the dark beam ceiling and out the chimney into the cave above and gone. I sat down on the rug. Junie was already asleep on the couch. A wool blanket I'd found in a wooden chest pulled up to her chin. Her cheeks pink now, pink instead of gray. Pink was a color I was prepared to thank God for tonight. Cody was at her feet, one eye open, one eye watching the door. I sat with my back against the stones of the fireplace. The warmth pushed into my spine. My boots were off. My socks were drying on the hearth. My feet hurt the way feet hurt when they remember they belong to you. I looked around the room. A clock on the wall stopped. The hands frozen at 4:17 a.m. or p.m. I had no way to know. A bookshelf, 3 rows. The titles were too faded to read in the firelight. A coat, a man's coat, brown, hanging on a peg by the door, a pair of work boots underneath it, smaller than I would have expected. Whoever had lived here was not a giant. He was a man my father's size, maybe a little shorter, maybe a little broader. He had been here, he had lived here, he had hung his coat on that peg. And then, what? He had left, he had died, he had gone to the store one day and never come back. I didn't know, I don't know, I may never know. But I know one thing, whoever he was, he had built this house with somebody in mind. Maybe not me, maybe not Junie, but somebody. He had built doorways at the right height. He had built shelves in reach. He had built a fireplace big enough to warm a body curled on the rug. He had thought about a person who wasn't him. That's a kind of love I had never seen before. It made my throat hurt. I closed my eyes. I told myself I was just going to rest them for 1 minute. I told myself I would stay awake. I would watch the door. I would protect us. I told myself a lot of things. The fire popped. The rain hammered against the mountain somewhere far above us. And then I was asleep. I dreamt of my father. He was standing in our old kitchen, the one in Burnsville, the one with the yellow curtains my mother had sewn herself the year I was born. He was at the stove, frying eggs. He looked up when I came in. "Hey, Addie Bug." "Hey, Dad." "You found it." "Found what?" He smiled. He didn't answer. He just smiled. And then I woke up. Sunlight was coming in through the window. Real sunlight. Not the gray smear of storm. Thin gold beams cutting through the dust. The fire had burned down to coals. The clock on the wall still said 4:17. I sat up. My back hurt. My neck hurt. Every part of me that had been sleeping on a wooden floor announced itself. But Junie was breathing. Junie was breathing, and her color was normal, and Cody was at the door scratching softly to be let out. I had survived the night. We had survived the night. In a stranger's house, in a cave, inside a mountain in North Carolina, in late October. Somehow, I got up, I walked to the door, I opened it, I let Cody out, I stepped onto the porch behind him, and I saw the cave for the first time in daylight. It was bigger than I had thought, much bigger. Stone walls rising up into a dome ceiling 30 feet above me, and through cracks in that ceiling, sunlight came down in pale ribbons. The light fell in patterns on the stone floor, like a cathedral, like the inside of something holy. I had grown up Methodist. I had sat through hundreds of Sunday services in a yellow brick church with bad carpeting. I had never once felt what I felt standing on that porch. I felt watched, not in a bad way, in a way like somebody had been waiting for me, like somebody had set the table. Cody was sniffing along the wall to my left. His tail was up. He moved slowly. He stopped at a crack in the rock. He pawed at it. I walked over. Water. A thin trickle of water sliding down the stone, catching the light, pooling in a small natural basin in the rock. A spring inside the cave. I knelt. I touched the water. It was cold, sweet smelling, clean. I cupped my hands. I drank. 22 years of tap water and bottled water and water that tasted faintly of chlorine and pipes, and nothing in my life had ever tasted like that water. Nothing. I sat back on my heels. I started to laugh. I don't know why. I laughed and laughed. Cody looked at me like I had lost my mind, which fair enough I might have, because there was a house, and the house had a roof, and the cave had water, and my sister was sleeping inside. And the man who had built this place had thought of everything. I went back inside. Junie was sitting up on the couch, hair a mess, eyes wide. "Addie, hey Bug, did I dream this?" "No, baby." "Are we in a fairy tale?" "I don't know yet. Is it a good fairy tale or a bad one?" "I'm gonna vote good." "Why?" "Because the dog likes it here." She looked over at Cody, who had come in behind me and was already back at his spot on the rug like he owned the place. "Yeah," she said, "he likes it." "So we vote good." "Okay." She slid off the couch. She walked over to me. She put her arms around my waist and her head against my stomach, and she stood there for a long time. I didn't move. I didn't dare. "Addie, yeah, I miss Mom. I know. I miss Dad. I know, baby. Did they know about this place?" I thought about that. I thought about my father telling me to trust the dog. I thought about the man in the photograph. I thought about the husky at his feet. "I don't know, Junie. I bet they did." "You think so?" "I bet they did, and they sent us here because they couldn't take us anymore." I closed my eyes. I held her tighter. Maybe, I said, maybe they did bug. I think so. Okay. Addie. Yeah. Can we stay another night? Yeah, baby. We can stay another night. She let go of me. She walked over to the photograph on the mantel, the one I had put face down last night. She picked it up. She turned it over. She looked at it for a long time. Addie. Yeah, this dog looks like Cody. I know, like exactly like Cody. I know. That's weird. I know. Who is the man? I don't know. He has a nice face. I came over to the mantel. I stood beside her. I looked at the photograph again, in the daylight this time, with my hands not shaking. The man was maybe 50, maybe a little older, dark hair beginning to silver at the temples, a beard close-cropped threading with gray. He wore a flannel shirt rolled to the elbows and the kind of work pants my father used to wear. He had a hammer hanging from a loop on his belt. He was smiling. He was smiling at whoever was holding the camera. And whoever was holding the camera had to have been somebody he loved, because that wasn't a polite smile. That wasn't a posing smile. That was the kind of smile you only give to someone whose face you know in the dark. He has a nice face, Junie said again. Yeah, he looks like a dad. I had to look away. Yeah, Bug, he does. She put the photograph back, face up this time. She said it carefully, like it mattered. Then she said, I'm hungry, Addie. And just like that, we were back in the real world. We had no food. We had not eaten anything since a bag of vending machine pretzels at the bus station 3 nights ago. My stomach had gone past pain and into a strange kind of numbness. Junie had not complained until now, which meant she was getting better, which meant we had a new problem. I went to the kitchen. I opened cabinets. Empty, empty, empty. A single jar of something on the top shelf that had crystallized into a hard brown rock at the bottom. Honey, maybe, from years ago. I left it. A drawer with rusted utensils. A drawer with linen towels folded. Nothing edible, which was almost a kindness when I thought about it, because if I had found food in those cabinets, I would have eaten it, and it would have been somebody else's food, and we would have been thieves. This way, we were just guests. I came back to the front room. We're going to go find some food, Bug. Cody and me. You're going to stay here. By myself. Just for a little while. What if somebody comes? Nobody is going to come. What if a bear comes? Junie, what if a bear comes? You hide in the bedroom, and you close the door, and you don't open it until you hear me. Okay? Promise. I promise. You stay inside this house. Okay. I knelt down. I held her face in my hands. I looked at her. She looked at me. She was 8 years old. She had our mother's eyes. She had our father's stubbornness. She had no idea what I was about to do because I had no idea what I was about to do. You are the most important thing in my life, I told her. I know. You know. You tell me a lot. Good. Addie. Yeah. Don't be gone long. I won't. Take Cody. He's coming. Take him because he found this place. I know Bug. He's the smart one. He really is. I kissed her forehead. I stood up. I walked to the door. I looked back. She was sitting cross-legged on the rug, the photograph in her lap, studying the man's face like she was memorizing it. And then she said without looking up, Addie, yeah, I don't think he was a bad man. What? The man who lived here, I don't think he was bad. Why do you say that? Because of the dog. Because of the dog. Yeah, what about the dog? Bad men have mean dogs. I stared at her. 8 years old. 8 years old, and she had figured something out that I hadn't figured out yet, that the people we love are written on the things we leave behind, that a dog's face in an old photograph could tell you everything you needed to know about the man holding the leash. Junie, yeah, you're a smart girl. I know. Don't open the door. I won't. Don't move from this rug. I won't. I love you. I love you, Addie. I stepped out onto the porch. The cave opened up around me. The light coming through the cracks above had shifted now. Mid-morning, maybe later. Without a working clock, I had no real way to tell. Cody looked up at me. He was at the cave entrance already, waiting. Okay, buddy, I whispered. Let's go find some breakfast. He turned and walked toward the narrow gap that led back out to the forest, toward the wet morning world, toward whatever was out there waiting for us, toward the part of the story I hadn't lived yet. And I followed him, because 3 days ago he had led me to a house that should not exist, because 2 hours ago he had laid down in front of a stranger's fireplace like he had been there 100 times, because the man in the photograph had loved a dog who looked just like him, because my father had told me to trust the dog. So I trusted the dog. I trusted him with everything I had left, and I followed him out into the trees. I didn't know yet what we were going to find. I didn't know yet about the blackberries, the trout, the ranger, the bear, the little wooden door behind the bookshelf, the journal in the cedar box, the woman in the general store with the silver hair and the eyes that held something she had been holding for 14 years. I didn't know any of that yet. All I knew was that my sister was warm, my dog was leading, my feet were dry, and somewhere on a stone mantel in a house that had no business existing, a man I had never met was still smiling, smiling at the camera, smiling at whoever loved him, smiling maybe at us. I stepped out of the cave. The forest smelled clean, washed, wet pine and turned earth. Somewhere a bird was singing, a bird I didn't know the name of, a bird that had survived the storm too. Cody looked back. One last time, to count. 1, 2, still here, buddy, still here. I closed the gap behind me as much as I could. I marked the entrance with a broken branch the way my father had taught me when I was 10 years old, and we got turned around hiking in the Smokies. You always mark the way back. You always mark the way back to the people you love. Then I walked into the trees, and the cave swallowed the sound of my footsteps behind me, and the morning began. The forest had changed overnight. 3 days ago it had been an enemy. Today it was something else, something less, something I could walk through without flinching at every cracking branch. Maybe it was the storm being over. Maybe it was the dry socks on my feet. Maybe it was the knowledge that somewhere behind me my sister was asleep on a couch in a house that had no business existing, and a dog had led us there, and I was still on this side of the dirt. Whatever it was, the forest felt smaller now. Cody walked in front of me. His nose was on the ground. His tail was up. He stopped every few yards. He listened. He moved on. I followed him for what must have been 20 minutes, down a slope, around the trunk of a fallen oak, through a stand of mountain laurel so thick I had to crouch. And then he stopped. He stopped and he sat. I came up beside him. And there in front of us was a clearing, small, maybe the size of my old apartment. And in the middle of that clearing was a brush of dark green bushes. And on those bushes, black, dark black, wet black, the kind of black that catches the light and gives it back. Blackberries. I stood very still because I thought I might be hallucinating, because 3 days ago I had been crouched in the rain trying to remember if you could eat acorns, because food had stopped being food in my head and had become the absence of food, and now there were berries, hundreds of them. Cody, he looked up at me. Buddy, his tail thumped once. Buddy, you're a genius. He yawned like he knew. I walked into the clearing and I started picking. My hands stained purple in under a minute. I ate one. Sweet, tart, real, almost too real. My stomach made a sound it had not made in a long time. I ate 3 more. I stopped. I forced myself to stop. Because Junie needed to eat. Because I had no container. Because of course I had no container. I took off my flannel shirt. I tied the sleeves together. I made a sack out of it. I filled it, carefully, layer by layer, until it bulged and the seams creaked. Cody watched me work. Don't judge me. His head tilted. I know it's not a basket. His head tilted the other way. I know. I walked back the way I had come, slower now, because the shirt sack swung against my hip and I was terrified I would lose a single berry. I marked my trail, snapped twigs, bent saplings, the way my father had taught me. I thought about my father a lot in those woods. I thought about him every time Cody looked back at me to count. The cave entrance was where I had left it. The branch I had wedged against the opening had not moved. I pushed it aside. I squeezed through. The cave was warm, or warmer than out. The damp had stayed outside. Junie, in here. She was on the rug, where I had left her. The photograph back on the mantel. Cody went straight to her, tail wagging, nose all over her face. She laughed. She actually laughed. 8 years old, sitting on a wool rug in a cave house under a mountain, laughing. I had not heard her laugh in a long time. I held up the shirt sack. Her eyes got big. Addie? Yeah. What did you find? What does it look like? Berries? Berries? How many? All of them. All of them. All of them. All of them in the whole forest. She stared. She stood. She walked over. She put her hand in the shirt. She came out with one. She put it in her mouth. She chewed, slowly, like she was tasting something for the first time. Maybe she was. Then she did something I did not expect. She started to cry, not loud, not dramatic, just water sliding down her face while she chewed, quietly, tears falling onto the wood floor. Junie, Junie, what's wrong? Nothing. What's wrong? Nothing, Addie. Tell me. It's just what? It's just so good. I sat down on the rug beside her. I pulled her into my lap. I held her there, just held her, while she ate blackberries with purple fingers in a stranger's house, in a cave in the woods. And I did not say anything, and she did not say anything, and Cody watched us with his ears at attention, because he had given us this, because somehow he had known. Trust the dog, trust the dog. I made a promise to myself in that moment, quietly, inside. A promise I did not say out loud. I was going to make this place a home, not for a week, not for the season, for as long as we needed it. I was going to figure out how to feed us. I was going to figure out how to keep us warm. I was going to figure out how to keep my sister alive in a way no Aunt Cordelia in Charlotte ever could have. I was going to honor whoever had built this house. I did not know yet who he was, but I was going to honor him. We slept that first full night with full stomachs. I woke up to a sound, a scratching, a soft scratching at the front door. I sat up fast, my heart in my mouth. The fire was low. The room was orange dim. Junie was on the couch, asleep, breathing. Cody was at the door, tail high, calm. Whatever was at the door, he was not afraid of it. I crossed the room. I put my hand on the latch. I waited. The scratching came again, soft. Then a low whine. Not a bear. Not a man. I cracked the door. A raccoon, a fat one, standing on the porch, holding what looked like an apple in its little black hands. We stared at each other. The raccoon dropped the apple. The raccoon ran. The apple rolled to my feet. I stared at it. Cody stared at it. I picked it up. I looked at it in the firelight. A real apple, red, with a single bite taken out of the side. "Are you serious?" I whispered to the dark. The dark did not answer. I closed the door. I washed the apple under the spring water. I cut around the bite. I split it into 2 halves and put it on a tin plate I had found in a kitchen drawer. I went to bed. In the morning, Junie woke up and saw the apple, and she said, "Where did this come from?" And I said, "A raccoon brought it." And she said, "Addie." And I said, "I'm serious." And she said, "Liar." And I said, "I swear on Dad's grave." She didn't say anything to that. We didn't talk about Dad's grave. But she ate her half of the apple, and I ate mine, and the apple was good. For 3 days after that, life had a shape. We had water, we had blackberries, we had a fire, we had each other. I found a thin nylon line in the storage room behind the kitchen and a rusted hook in a coffee tin, and I went down to the creek that ran along the base of the slope below the cave. The creek my father would have called a crick. I made a pole out of a willow branch. I tied the line on. I caught nothing the first day. I caught nothing the second day. The third day I caught a fish. I caught a fish. Brook trout, maybe 10 inches, speckled gold and pink and brown, the kind of fish you read about in books that are about better times than this. I held it up in my hands and I looked at it and I started to laugh, just like I had laughed at the spring water, just like that. Cody was on the bank, watching. He looked at the fish. He looked at me. He looked back at the fish. He licked his lips. "No, sir. This is for the human girls." He whined. "Maybe a fin." He thumped his tail. I cleaned the fish at the creek. I had read about it once in a magazine at a dentist's office, and I prayed my memory was good enough. I think it mostly was. I carried it home wrapped in wet leaves. I cooked it over the fire in the cast iron pan that had been hanging by the hearth. The smell. Oh my God, the smell. Junie sat at the table, and her eyes were the size of dinner plates. "Addie." "Yeah? Did you actually?" "I did. With a stick. With a stick and a hook and a lot of patience. You are like a mountain woman." "I am a mountain woman. You used to work at a diner." "That was a different woman." She thought about that. She said, "I like the new one." I cried into the cast iron pan a little. Just a little, just enough to season it. By the 5th day in the house, we had a routine. Wake up, light the fire if it had gone out, drink from the spring, eat berries with whatever else I had managed to find the day before. Mushrooms sometimes, the white ones that grew on the side of the dead poplar. I knew those were safe. My father had taught me. I knew which mushrooms killed you and which mushrooms fed you. And I had stayed away from anything I didn't know on sight. Junie would read. That was the strangest part of all of it. There was a bookshelf in the front room, 3 rows, and the books on those shelves were dusty but readable, old westerns mostly, a few mysteries, a worn copy of Robinson Crusoe, a Bible, a child's picture book that had been left on the bottom shelf almost out of sight. She picked the picture book the first morning. I sat on the rug and I asked her, "Junie, why that one?" She said, "Because the dog on the cover looks like Cody." The dog on the cover did look like Cody. I had stopped being surprised by that kind of thing. We had a routine until we didn't. The night Junie got sick, I was outside hauling firewood. I had built a small stack of split logs beside the porch. Whoever had lived in this house had left a hatchet leaning against the back wall. The blade was dull, but the handle was good. I had spent the afternoon splitting wood. My shoulders hurt in a way that meant I had done something with my body. My hands were blistered. I didn't care. I came in carrying an armload of wood. I dumped it by the hearth. I looked at the couch. Junie was crying. Not loud, not big, just crying, with her face turned away from the fire, like she didn't want me to see. Bug, she didn't answer. Junie, look at me. She turned her head, slowly. Her cheeks were red, too red. Her eyes were too bright. I put my hand on her forehead. I almost dropped it. The fever was back, worse than the first night, worse than I had ever felt on a person before. Addie, I'm here. It hurts. What hurts, baby? All of it. Where do you mean? My head, my back, my everything. I sat down beside her. I put my arms around her. She was shaking, not from cold, from inside. Cody pressed against her legs. I tried to think. I tried to think the way a mother thinks, which I was not, but which I was the only candidate for. My mother was dead. My aunt was in Charlotte. The closest hospital was a place I had not even thought of in 3 days, and we had no medicine, none. I had used the last of the children's Tylenol in my backpack the second night in the woods. I had nothing. I had a fish, a cave, a dog, a house, a sister with a high fever, and nothing. I felt the panic come up from my feet. I shoved it down. I shoved it down. Because panic does not save children. Action saves children. My father had told me that once, about a kid who had wandered off at a campsite when I was 11. Don't panic, Addie. Panic is a luxury. We don't have time for it. Bug. Yeah, listen to me. I am going to go to town. I am going to get you medicine. No. Yes. Don't leave me. I have to. Addie, don't. I have to. I have to, baby. Do you understand? She started to cry harder. Don't go, don't go, don't go. I held her face. Hey, hey, look at me. She looked at me. You know what I always tell you. She nodded. Tell me. You always come back. Always. Always. What's always? Always. That's right. That's right, baby. I'm always going to come back. I'm always going to come back to you. Even if the whole world burns down, I will walk through it to come back. Okay? Cody is staying with you. Okay. Cody will protect you. Okay. You stay on this couch. You drink water. You sleep if you can. Okay. I kissed her forehead. I kissed it again. I stood up. Cody was already by the couch. He had positioned himself between her and the door. He looked at me. He didn't move. Buddy, he didn't move. Buddy, you stay with her. He didn't move. I know. I put on my coat. I put on my boots. I checked my flashlight. I had maybe 40 minutes of battery left. I would have to make it last. I had seen lights through the trees 3 days ago, south, down the slope, beyond a ridge. There had to be a road. There had to be a town. The bus had stopped in Spruce Pine. The town was somewhere south. I would walk. I would walk all night if I had to. Junie, yeah. What is the rule? You always come back. What else? Don't open the door for anyone but you. Good girl. Addie, yeah. Don't die. I almost broke. I almost broke right there in the doorway with my hand on the latch. I did not. I won't bug. I promise. And I stepped out into the cold. The forest at night was a different country. I walked south. I followed the slope down. I followed the sound of water because creeks run downhill and downhill goes to roads. My flashlight beam shook in front of me. My ankles turned on roots. I fell twice. I got up twice. I thought about Junie's face. I thought about it the whole way down the mountain. I thought about her cheeks, the red of them, the wrong red of them. I thought about her hand in mine in the funeral home 8 weeks ago. I thought about her voice through the bedroom door on the night we got the call from the highway patrol. I thought about how she had said, "Addie, is that you? Why are you crying?" I walked faster. I walked until I couldn't walk faster, and then I walked some more. I broke out of the trees onto a 2-lane road. Asphalt, cold under my boots, a yellow center line, a real road, the kind of road my parents used to drive on. I turned right. I had no good reason to turn right. It just felt right. I walked. After what could have been an hour, after what could have been 3, I saw a light, a storefront, not from any textbook or professional training or adult guidance, from watching her father, from understanding at 12 that his shame lived in the gaze of others and had to be treated first, that his dignity was the thing that needed to come back before anything else could. She picked up the second notebook, age 12, second month, more detailed, more observations. She had been cataloging her father's progress with the same precision that a scientist used to catalog an experiment, except the scientist was 12 and the experiment was her father's life. There were 17 notebooks. Rosie Cutter had kept notebooks from 12 to 18. By the 16th one, she was 17, and the methods had become more sophisticated, informed by the other men her father had started bringing in. Observations about what worked for men who were ashamed versus men who were angry versus men who had simply never believed they were capable of anything different. Different approaches for different silences. The 17th notebook was dated when Rosie was 18, the summer before she'd left for college. The last entry said, "She rang up nothing. She put it in a paper sack. She handed it to me. I stared at her. I have $11. I know, honey. I can pay. I know. Please, please let me pay." She looked at me over the top of her glasses. She had blue eyes, the pale blue of a thing washed many times. "Sweetheart," she said, "where I come from, you don't make a girl pay for medicine for her sister." I felt my knees go. I felt the whole night go. I felt every mile I had just walked come down on me at once. I started to cry, standing there in a country store in the middle of nowhere, holding a paper sack of medicine that a stranger had given me for free. I started to cry like I had not cried since the lawyer's office, since the poinsettia and the navy blazer. She came around the counter again. She put her hand on my arm. She did not hug me. She did not try to fix it. She just put her hand on my arm, and she stood there with me while I cried, like she had done it before, like she had done it many times before, for other girls, for other reasons. When I stopped, she handed me a handkerchief from her cardigan pocket. I wiped my face. "What's your name, honey?" I almost lied. I almost said something else, because I was technically a fugitive, because somewhere in Charlotte there was an aunt waiting on white carpet, because if anyone connected me to my sister, we could be separated by dinner time tomorrow. But the woman was looking at me, and her eyes were doing something I had not felt in a long time. They were holding me. "Adeline," I said. "Most people call me Addie." "Adeline." She rolled the name slowly, like she was trying it on. "That's a good name. My grandmother was Adeline. What's yours?" "Della. Della. Della Thornberry." I nodded. "Della. I'll pay you back. I swear to God I'll pay you back." She smiled. "Honey, you don't owe me a dime. I owe you everything. Then go give that medicine to your sister." I started to go. I was at the door. She said my name. I turned. "Adeline." "Yes, ma'am." "If you need anything else, anything, you come back, day or night. The light is always on. Why? It came out of my mouth before I could stop it. Why what? Why are you doing this? She looked at me for a long time. She looked at me the way my grandmother used to look at me when I was a kid, and I had asked something she didn't quite want to answer. Then she said, "Honey, somebody once did something kind for me a long time ago. I'm just keeping the balance." I didn't understand. Not yet. I would. Later. I would understand later. I just nodded. I went out into the cold. The bell rang behind me. I walked back up the mountain. I walked back up that mountain with a paper sack against my chest, with Della Thornberry's handkerchief stuffed into my pocket, with a feeling in me I had not had in months, the feeling of having been seen, of having been let inside a small bright store at 1 in the morning by a stranger who did not want anything from me, who only wanted me to bring medicine to my sister. I made it back to the cave just before dawn. Junie was where I had left her. Cody was where I had left him. She was breathing. She was breathing. I dropped to my knees. I opened the bottle. I gave her the medicine. I made her drink water. I made her eat a piece of bread soaked in honey. I made her drink broth I heated in the cast iron pan over the fire. She slept. I sat beside her on the floor, and I watched her sleep. I did not sleep myself for nearly 2 days. I did not move from her side. On the second morning, her fever broke. She opened her eyes. She looked at me. "Addie." "I'm here, Bug." "You came back." "Always." She smiled. "A small one, a tired one, a real one." "What did the lady look like?" "What lady?" "You went to a lady. I dreamt it." I stared at her. "You dreamt it?" "Yeah, a lady with white hair. She had a cat." I had not seen a cat, but I had not been looking for one. "What did the cat look like?" "Orange." "Was it sitting on the counter?" "No, on a stool by the window." I had been too tired to see the window. I had been too tired to see anything but the woman. But I believed her. I believed there had been a cat. I believed it the way you believe a dog who tells you a tree is the right tree. I kissed her forehead. "Yeah, Bug, there was a lady." I knew it. The next week the snow came, just a dusting, October snow, the kind that makes the cave entrance look like it has been frosted by hand, the kind that makes you grateful for a roof. Junie was healing, slowly, like the fever had taken a piece of her, and the piece was growing back day by day. I started fixing things. I started with the door. The latch had been loose. I tightened it with the screwdriver from the storage room. I rehung the hinges. The door swung true now. Then I fixed the window in the kitchen. A pane had cracked at some point, probably from a falling rock years ago. I patched it with a square of board and 3 nails I found in a coffee can. Then I scrubbed the floors. I scrubbed them with hot water from the kettle and a bristle brush I found under the sink. The wood underneath was beautiful. Pine, wide plank, honey-colored. Whoever had laid that floor had laid it with care. Each board the same width, each joint flush. A craftsman. I started thinking about him a lot. The man in the photograph, the man with the husky. I started thinking about him while I worked. What had his hands looked like? What had his voice sounded like? What had he been building this for? What had happened to him? Was he dead? Was he alive? Was he somewhere right now knowing about us? Somewhere down the road in a porch chair in winter sun, somewhere old and gentle and waiting. I didn't know. I worked. Junie sat by the fire and read out loud to Cody. Easy words, simple sentences. Cody was a patient audience. I taught her the harder words from the bookshelf in the evenings. We read a Western together, about a sheriff and a horse and a man with a debt to settle. She mispronounced posse as posse for 3 days and I never corrected her because it made me laugh. Things were almost good until the morning the ranger found us. I was out behind the cave entrance, stacking wood. The sun was up. The air was clean. Cody was 20 feet away, sniffing a stump. His head came up sharp, ears forward, body still. I heard it then. A boot on a stone, a human boot. A man came around the bend, khaki uniform, heavy jacket, a green patch on the shoulder, a handheld radio on his hip, a badge, a forest ranger, maybe 30, maybe 35, sandy hair, a jaw that hadn't been shaved in a few days, a face that wasn't unkind, a face that wasn't soft either. He stopped when he saw me. He stopped about 15 feet away. We looked at each other. Cody did not bark. He did not growl. He came and stood beside my left leg. His tail was still, his weight forward. The ranger held up both hands, slowly, palms out. Easy, girl. Hi. You first. I'm camping. He looked past me. He looked at the cave entrance. He looked back at me. In there. Yes, that's a cave. It is. Is that legal? I don't know. He almost smiled. He didn't quite. He took a step back. He looked around the clearing. He looked at the wood pile I had built. He looked at the path I had worn between the cave and the creek. He looked at me again. Ma'am? Yes. Is there anybody in there with you? I hesitated. I hesitated too long. My sister. How old is she? 8. His face changed. Not by much, but it changed. 8. Yes. How long have you been out here? A couple weeks. A couple weeks? Yes. Through that last storm? Yes. He took off his hat. He ran a hand through his hair. He looked at the ground. He looked at me. He said very carefully, Ma'am, federal land, there are rules. I know. You shouldn't be here. I know. I'm supposed to call this in. I felt the world tilt. Please, ma'am, please don't. You have an 8-year-old in there. She's safe. She's warm. We have food. We have water. I am not hurting her. She is fed. She is loved. My voice cracked on the word. He looked at me. He looked at me for a long time. Then he looked at Cody. Cody looked back at him. The ranger said, Is that dog rabies vaccinated? Yes. You sure? He is my father's dog. My father is dead. He is vaccinated. He is licensed. He is everything you can be. He nodded. He nodded slowly. He said, What's your name? Adeline Locke. Mine is Caleb. Caleb Briggs. Caleb. Yeah, Caleb, please, please. He looked off into the trees. He looked at the cave entrance. He looked back at me. He said, Ma'am, I have to go now. I closed my eyes. I waited for the radio. The radio did not come. He said, I have to go because I have other things to do today, and I did not see anyone out here today. Did I? I opened my eyes. He was looking at me. No, sir, I whispered. I'll be back this way next week. Okay. You and your sister should think about what you want to do by then. Okay. And ma'am, yes. There's a woman in town, Della Thornberry, down at the general store. I went very still. Yes. If you need anything, tell her I sent you. Why? He looked at the cave entrance one more time. He looked at me. He said, Because she would want to know you were out here. That's all. He put his hat back on. He turned. He walked back the way he came. I stood in that clearing for a long time after he was gone. Cody pressed against my leg, the cold sun on my hair, the sound of his boots fading into the trees. I did not know what had just happened, but I knew Della's name had just saved us. I just didn't know why. Not yet. I went back inside. Junie was at the kitchen table. Addie? Yeah, Bug. Was that a man? Yes. A bad one. No, a good one. How do you know? I looked at Cody. Cody was already back on his rug, tail wagging. Once, twice. Trust the dog bug. Okay. I started the fire up again. I sat down at the table across from her. I looked at the photograph on the mantel. The man was smiling. The man was smiling like he always had been. And outside somewhere, the snow began to fall again. That night, the bear came. I was asleep on the rug in front of the fire. I had given Junie the only bedroom in the house, a small one, with a single bed and a quilt and a window that looked out at the stone wall of the cave. I slept on the rug, like Cody. It was Cody who woke me, not a bark, a growl deep in his chest, the kind of growl I had not heard from him since he was a puppy and somebody had reached for my father's beer at a 4th of July. I sat up. The fire was low. The room was full of long shadows. He was at the front door, hackles up, body low, eyes on the door. Cody! He did not look at me. He growled again. Outside something moved, something heavy. The porch wood groaned. The porch wood groaned under a weight that was not human. I held my breath. A snuffling sound at the door. A long, slow snuffling, like something pressed its nose to the gap under the threshold and was breathing in. The hair on the back of my neck went up. Bear. I knew it without seeing. A black bear. Smelling food. The honey, the bread, the fish bones I had buried, but maybe not deep enough. I stood up, slow as I could. Junie was in the bedroom, asleep. The door was closed. The bear sniffed harder. The door rattled. Cody exploded. I had never seen him move that fast, not in his whole life. He hit the door with his shoulder, and the door flew open under his weight, and he was out on the porch before I could grab him. Cody, he was already gone. I ran to the door. The bear was huge, a black mass against the gray cave, 500 pounds easy, reared up on its back legs because Cody had launched at it. Cody was a streak of white and gray. He was at the bear's hind leg, biting, snapping, backing off, coming in again. The bear swung at him. Cody dodged. The bear swung again. Cody was a blur. I screamed something I don't remember. I grabbed the cast iron pan from the hearth. I ran out onto the porch and I started banging the pan against the railing and screaming, just screaming, like a wild thing, like a banshee, like an animal myself. The bear turned its head toward me. The bear was 4 feet from the porch. The bear could have killed me with one swipe. Cody went for its throat, just like that, up and at its throat. The bear roared and twisted, and the bear's paw came down and it caught Cody across the side, and Cody flew sideways and hit the ground and didn't get up right away. I screamed again. The bear looked at me. The bear looked at Cody. The bear looked at the cave entrance. And then the bear ran. The bear actually ran. Maybe it was the noise. Maybe it was the dog. Maybe it was the sight of a furious 22-year-old girl in a flannel shirt banging a cast iron pan in the middle of the night. I don't know, but it ran. The bear ran out of the cave and into the woods, and I never saw it again. I dropped the pan. I ran to Cody. He was on his side, breathing, awake, his eyes on me. His back leg was wet, blood, dark in the firelight from the open door. Buddy, 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 he whined. He tried to get up. No, stay down, buddy. I picked him up, all 70 pounds of him. I do not remember picking him up. I just remember that suddenly he was in my arms and I was carrying him to the porch. Addie, Junie was at the door, in her nightgown. Bug, go back inside. What happened to Cody? He's okay. He's bleeding. He's okay, baby. Listen to me. Go get the kitchen towels, the clean ones, now. She went. I laid Cody down on the rug in front of the fire. I looked at his back leg. A long gash, maybe 4 inches, not arterial, not life-threatening, but deep and dirty. I cleaned it with hot water from the kettle. I cleaned it with the honey Della had given me. I had read once that honey was a natural antiseptic. Maybe it was true, maybe it wasn't. I had no other options. I wrapped his leg in strips of linen from a kitchen towel. He let me do it. He let me do it without a single sound. He just watched me. He watched me with his blue eyes, the blue of glacier water, the blue of the husky in the photograph on the mantle, the blue of a dog who had walked into a fight that was not his fight because he loved an 8-year-old girl asleep in the next room. When I was done, when I was completely done, I put my forehead against his head and I closed my eyes and I said the only thing I had left. Thank you, thank you, thank you. He licked my cheek once. He slept. In the morning, he was still alive. In the morning, he stood up on 3 legs and he ate a piece of bread out of my hand and he limped to his rug and laid down and slept again. In the morning, Junie sat next to him and stroked his ears and cried a little. In the morning, I knew we could not stay in this house forever. I knew the bear would come back. I knew the ranger would come back. I knew the medicine would run out. I knew the snow would deepen. I knew 1,000 things were coming that I could not solve. But we had survived a bear. We had survived a fever. We had survived a forest ranger. We had survived everything the world had thrown at us so far. And I was tired, so tired. I sat down at the table, I put my face in my hands, and then I did something I had not done in weeks. I looked up at the bookshelf, really looked, because something was not right about the bookshelf. Something had been bothering me about it since the first day. I stood up, I walked over. I ran my hand along the side of it, the right side, where it met the wall. There was a gap behind it. I had not noticed it before because the room was always dim, because I had not been looking, because I had been busy surviving. But there was a gap. The bookshelf was not flush against the wall. The bookshelf was hiding something. Junie, yeah, come here. Why? Just come here. She came. She stood beside me. I said, help me move this. We pulled. The bookshelf was heavier than I expected. We rocked it. We walked it forward inch by inch. Books slid. One fell. Junie caught it. We kept going until we could see behind it, and behind it, behind the bookshelf, set into the wooden wall, was a door, a small door, no taller than 4 feet, the kind of door a child might use, the kind of door you would build if you wanted to hide a room, a door with an iron handle, a door that had been closed for a long time. Junie's hand went into mine. Junie's hand was cold. Addie, yeah, what's behind it? I don't know. Are we gonna open it? I looked at her. I looked at Cody, asleep on his rug with his bandaged leg. I looked at the photograph on the mantle. I looked at the man with the dog, who looked just like ours. I looked at the door. I put my hand on the iron handle. It was warm, which made no sense. The iron handle of a door inside a cold cave should not have been warm, but it was. It was warm like something on the other side of it had been waiting a very long time. For somebody, for anybody, for us. I took a breath. I turned the handle. I pulled. The door opened. The hinges did not creak, which they should have, which any door closed for years should have. But these hinges had been oiled recently by somebody who knew the door was there, somebody who had kept it ready, a small room, maybe 6 feet by 6 feet, stone walls, a wooden floor laid by the same hand that had laid the floor in the main room, a single shelf along the far wall, a wooden chest on the floor, a workbench, tools hanging in neat rows on iron pegs, hammers, 3 sizes, hand planes, a draw knife, chisels in order from smallest to largest, a leather apron folded on a hook, and on the workbench, in the middle of the workbench, a box, a cedar box, maybe the size of a loaf of bread, brass corners, a brass clasp, no lock. The box was the only thing in the room that was dusty. Everything else had been wiped clean. Recently, Junie stepped in behind me. Addie, yeah, why are the tools clean? I don't know. Did the man come back? I don't know, baby. Is he going to come back? I looked at the box. I don't know that either. I knelt down. I put my hand on the cedar. The wood was warm, like the iron handle had been warm, like everything in this house had been waiting. I opened it. Inside, 3 photographs, a small leather journal, a folded paper that looked like a letter, and a small wooden figure, carved, hand-carved, a husky, white and gray paint long since faded, the ears at attention, the tail in a curl, the blue eyes painted by a brush that had been patient, a husky exactly like Cody. Exactly. I had thought the photograph was a coincidence. I had told myself it was a coincidence. I had let myself believe in coincidence for 2 weeks because the other option made my chest hurt. But you cannot photograph 2 coincidences. You cannot carve a third. I picked up the figure. It fit in my palm. It was lighter than I expected. The wood was smooth, worn smooth, like somebody had held it many times, like somebody had carried it in a pocket. Junie reached for it. I let her take it. She looked at it for a long time. Then she walked back into the main room. She put the figure on the rug beside Cody. Cody sniffed it. Cody's tail thumped twice. Junie said, "He recognizes himself." I sat down on the workbench stool. I picked up the journal. The leather was soft. The pages inside were yellowed but readable. The writing was in pencil. A man's hand, careful, sloping slightly to the right. I opened to the first page. A name, Wendell Thornberry. I stopped breathing. Thornberry, Della Thornberry. Della at the general store who had not asked me for $1. Della who had told the forest ranger to send me her way. Della whose name had stopped Caleb Briggs from picking up his radio. Thornberry, Thornberry. I felt the floor go. I sat there on that workbench stool in the back room of a house under a mountain, and I held a journal written by a man named Wendell Thornberry who had built this house, and the woman in town who had given me medicine for free at 1 in the morning was named Thornberry, and the dog at my feet looked exactly like a dog who had been carved into a figurine by a man I had never met, and I had thought we were lost in the woods. I had thought we had stumbled here. I had thought this was random. It was not random. Nothing about this was random. I started to read. I am going to tell you what was in that journal. I am going to tell you what Wendell Thornberry wrote because I have read those pages so many times now that I could recite them from memory. I am going to tell you in my own words because some words belong to the person who wrote them and you do not repeat them to a stranger. But I will tell you the shape of it. Wendell was 49 years old when his wife died. His wife's name was Eleanor. Their daughter was 4 years old. Her name was Margaret. Margaret was called Maggie. There was a fire in their farmhouse in the spring of 1997. An old wood stove, a flue that had not been cleaned, a night when Wendell was working a job 2 towns over and could not be home. He did not get there in time. He never said the word fire in the journal. He only said, "The night I lost them." He never described what he found. He only said that he could not stay in the house after, that he could not be in any house with walls and a roof, that for 3 months he slept in his truck. He was a carpenter. His hands had built houses for other people for nearly 30 years, and his hands could not build anything anymore. Then one night in the autumn of 1997, he was driving through the Blue Ridge with his dog, a husky he had raised from a puppy, a dog his daughter had named Stormy. A storm came up. He pulled off the road. He walked into the trees to find shelter. The dog led him to a cave. The dog led him to a cave under a great oak tree on the side of a mountain. He slept in that cave that night. And in the morning, he stood inside it, and he looked at the ceiling, and he looked at the stone walls, and he looked at the way the light came down through the cracks above him. And he said out loud to no one but the dog, "This is going to be a house." He spent the next year building it by himself, with his hands, carrying the lumber in piece by piece through that narrow entrance, hauling stone, laying the floor, cutting the windows, setting the chimney. He wrote that he did not build it for himself. He wrote that he could not have lived in it. He wrote that the whole time he was building it, the whole year, he was thinking of a woman he did not know yet. He was thinking of a woman with her child. He was thinking of someone running from something to something, anything. He did not know who. He did not know what. He just knew. He knew he was building a house for somebody who was going to need it. He wrote a line, "The line I will give you because it is the only one I can give you, the only one that is short enough. A house should know when somebody walks through the door that they are home." He finished the house in the autumn of 1998. He stocked it with tools, with blankets, with a pan over the fire. He laid in firewood. He left a Bible on the shelf. He left a picture book for a child, and then he closed the door. He walked back out of the cave. He never lived in it. He moved to a small house in town. He took up work again, carpenter work. He never married again. He kept the husky. Stormy lived to be 14. When Stormy died, Wendell carved a wooden husky and kept it in a cedar box. And he wrote that whoever found the box would know the dog had been good. He wrote that he checked on the house twice a year, spring and fall, made sure the roof was sound, made sure the spring still ran, made sure no animals had broken in. He wrote that he asked his younger sister Della to do the same thing if anything ever happened to him. He wrote, "Della is the kindest person I know. She will not ask questions. She will know who to give the house to. She will know." He died in 2010. He died of cancer, 62 years old, in a hospital bed in Asheville, with his sister beside him. The last entry in the journal is from her, a different handwriting, a woman's handwriting, round and slow. Wendell asked me to write here when he could not anymore. He passed peaceful this morning. I told him before he closed his eyes that I would keep the house ready. He smiled. He said, "Della, somebody will come. You only have to wait." So I will wait. I will wait as long as the Lord asks me to. That was the last entry. Until I turned the page, and there was one more dated 3 weeks ago, October, this October, the October I had bought our bus tickets and run into the woods. In the same round handwriting, Caleb came by the store last night. He says he saw smoke from the mountain. He says he thinks there's somebody in the cave. He did not call it in. He came to me. He came to me first. I have not been out to check. I am 68 years old, and the path is too steep for me anymore. but I am praying for whoever is up there. I am praying it is the person Wendell was waiting for. I do not know if I will live to know, but it is in God's hands. It has always been in God's hands. I closed the journal. And I sat on that stool in that small room and I did not move. I do not know how long I sat there. It might have been an hour. It might have been longer. The fire in the next room burned low. Junie came back. She put her hand on my arm. She said, "Addie, are you crying?" I said, "Yes." She said, "Is it bad crying?" I said, "No, baby, it is the other kind." She nodded. She sat down on the floor at my feet. She leaned her head against my knee. She did not say anything else, because she did not have to, because she was 8 years old and she had figured out long before me that this place was not random, that a dog who looked just like the dog in a photograph was not random, that a woman in a store at 1 in the morning was not random, that a forest ranger who would not call us in was not random. That kindness left behind is not random. I sat there until the fire was almost out. Then I stood up. I knew what I had to do. I had to go back to town. I had to go back to Della Thornberry. I had to bring her brother's journal, and I had to tell her that her brother had not built that house in vain. I had to give her the answer she had been waiting for since 1998. I went the next morning. The snow was thin on the ground. The sun was out. The world looked clean. I left Junie with Cody. He could walk again, slow, but he could walk. He stood at the door when I was leaving, and he looked at me and his tail wagged once. I got her. Go. I walked the same road I had walked at 1 in the morning 2 weeks before. In daylight, it was a different road, shorter, less mythological, just a country road with leafless trees and a yellow line. The bell over the door of the general store rang the same way. Della looked up. Her face changed. It changed in stages, first surprise, then a careful softening, then something I could not name, something old, something she had carried a long time. Adeline. Hi, Della. Your sister. She is well. The fever. It broke. She is well. Thank you, Della. Oh, honey, you don't owe me thanks. I walked to the counter. I set the journal down on it. She looked at the journal. She looked at me. She looked at the journal again. She did not touch it. Where did you find that? In a cedar box, in a room behind the bookshelf. Her hand went to her mouth. Adeline, in the house. Honey, your brother's house. She closed her eyes. She stood very still behind the counter with her glasses on a chain and her cardigan with the coffee stain. She closed her eyes and she did not move and she did not cry. Not yet. She just stood there. After a long time, she said, "Sit down, sweetheart." I sat. She came around the counter. She turned the sign on the door to close. She locked the door. She came back. She sat down across from me on a stool. She picked up the journal. She held it the way you hold a baby. She said, "I have not seen this book since 2010. He left it for whoever came. He did. He left it for me, didn't he? For us." She looked up at me. Her eyes were very blue. Her eyes were the same blue as Cody's. "Honey," she said, "he did not know it was going to be you. He could not have. But yes, he left it for whoever came. He believed someone would. I believed it some days and stopped believing it other days. And then Caleb came in and said he had seen smoke." Caleb. Yes, Caleb Briggs. He grew up around here. His mother was a friend of mine. I have known that boy since he was in diapers. I used to give him peppermint sticks at this counter when he was 4. He didn't call us in. He came to me first. Why? Because I asked him to. You asked him. I told him a long time ago, Caleb, if you ever find anyone in that cave, you come to me before you call anybody else. He has been a ranger 15 years. He has never had to come tell me. Until 3 weeks ago, I sat with that for a moment. I had thought Caleb was a kind man. He was a kind man. He was also a man who had been keeping a promise to an old woman for 15 years, who had walked up that mountain expecting to find a hiker or a teenager or a drifter, and had found a 22-year-old girl with a sister and a dog, and had kept his promise. I said, Della, yes, honey. Why did you give me the medicine that night? Because you were a girl with $11 and a sick sister. That is not all. No, honey, it is not all. What is the rest? She set the journal down. She folded her hands in her lap. She looked at me, and she said the thing she had been carrying for 27 years. My brother lost his wife and his little girl in 1997. He was never the same after. I lived 2 hours from him, and I drove out every week. I cooked his suppers. I sat with him on porches. I watched him become a different man, and when he started building that house in the cave, I thought he had finally lost the rest of his mind. I told him so. I said, Wendell, you cannot bring them back by building a house for strangers. He said to me, Della, I am not trying to bring them back. I am trying to make sure no other family has to be where I was that night. And I sat down and I cried because I understood him for the first time in a year. She paused. She took a slow breath. He died believing somebody would come. He went peaceful because he believed it. I promised him I would watch. And I have watched for 14 years. Twice a year I drove a young man up that trail, and I paid him to check the roof and oil the hinges and sweep the floor. He thought I was a crazy old lady. He thought I was paying him to maintain a hunting cabin. I let him think that. She paused again. She looked at the journal in her hands. I am 68 years old, Adeline. I will not live forever. There have been nights I lay in bed and I thought, Lord, what if I die before they come? What if Wendell waited his whole life, and his sister waited her whole life, and nobody ever came at all? What if the kindness just dies in the cave? I could not speak. And then Caleb came in and he said he saw smoke, and I thought it was a hiker. I thought it was a teenager. I thought it was a drifter. And then a girl came through my door at 1 a.m, and she said her sister had a fever, and she had $11 in her pocket. She looked at me, and I knew. I looked at her. I did not know how. I did not know why. I just knew. Her voice broke on the last word. She did not cry loud. She cried the way women her age cry. Soft, polite, folded hands, tears that slid sideways into the lines around her eyes. The crying of a woman who had practiced not crying for a very long time. I came around the counter. I sat on the floor at her feet. I put my arms around her knees the way I used to put my arms around my mother's knees when I was 4. She put her hand on my head. She said, honey. I said, yes. She said he did not build it in vain. I said, no, he didn't. We sat there, 2 strangers, connected by a house, by a dog, by a man who had been dead for 14 years. We sat there for a long time. The orange cat from the front window came down off its stool. It walked over. It rubbed against my leg. I laughed through my tears. What? My sister dreamt about your cat. My cat. She said you had an orange cat the night I came. You did not see him. I did not see him. I was too tired. Oh, Adeline. She knew. She knew before I did. Della shook her head. Children know things. They do. Animals know things. They do. Old women know things. They do. She smiled. I smiled. The cat purred against my knee. We figured out the rest of it over the next 2 months. Della knew people in this town. She had run that store for 41 years. She had given peppermint sticks to 2 generations of children. She knew the sheriff. She knew the lawyer. She knew the school principal. She knew the judge. She made phone calls. She had me over for supper. She made me drink hot tea, and she made me eat biscuits with apple butter. And she said, honey, the law is not the same thing as justice. The law is just what you can convince a judge of. She introduced me to a woman named Hannah Marsh. Hannah had been a family attorney in this county for 30 years. Hannah was Della's friend from church. Hannah looked at me across her desk and she said, Adeline, your aunt has not contested anything in 2 months. Has she? I said, no, ma'am. She said, has she even tried to find you? I said, I don't think so. She said, then we file for guardianship in this jurisdiction. Della will testify to your character. I will help you with the petition. We file in your home county. We notify your aunt. We give her 30 days to object. If she does not object, the court will grant. I said, why are you helping me? She said, because Della asked, and because Wendell built that house. I said, you knew Wendell. She said, honey, everybody in this county knew Wendell. He fixed my mother's porch in 2003. We filed. We waited. My aunt did not object. My aunt did not show up. My aunt did not even send a letter. She did not want us. She had never wanted us. And the law, once it was on our side, let us go. In December, the judge signed the papers. I stood in a courthouse in a small county in North Carolina, holding Junie's hand, and a judge in a black robe looked down at us from a bench, and he said, Miss Locke, you are now the legal guardian of June Elizabeth Locke. Take care of her. Welcome to the rest of your life. I cried right there in front of him. Junie laughed. She said, Addie, you're the mom now. I said, don't tell me that. She said, it's true. I said, it is true. God help us both. We walked out of that courthouse into the December sun. Della was waiting on the steps. She had bought us each a candy bar. We drove home in her old Buick, up the mountain road, past the trailhead where the path led to the cave, past it this time, to her little house in town, because she had asked us to stay with her, because the cave was not a place for a child to spend the winter, because she had a spare bedroom that had been empty for 14 years, because she said on the night I first came down to her store that the light was always on. She had meant it. I went back up to the house in the cave in the spring. In April, Caleb drove me up to the trailhead. He had become a friend by then, a real one. He had eaten 3 Sunday suppers at Della's table with us. He had taught Junie to identify red oaks. He had laughed at my fish stories. He had not flinched when Cody put his head in his lap. I went up alone that morning, just me and Cody. The dogwoods were blooming. The hillside was full of trillium. The path I had carved in October had been softened by the winter, and the new grass was coming in over it. By summer, there would be no trail at all, which was right, which was as it should be. I walked through the narrow entrance. I walked into the cave. The house was where I had left it. The light through the cracks in the ceiling fell on the porch, the way it had fallen on the morning I had first seen the place in daylight. I went inside. It smelled the same, cedar, old smoke, dry herbs, home. I sat down at the wooden table. I took out the journal from my bag. I had been writing in it all winter, a page here, a page there. I had written about Junie's fever, about the bear, about Cody's leg, about the night I read Wendell's words for the first time, about the way an orange cat in a country store had been more important than I had known. I had written about my parents. I had written my mother's name. I had written my father's name. I had written the names of his children, the 2 of us, Adeline and June. I had written about the dog. I had written every detail I could remember about Cody, so that if somebody came after me, after all of us were gone, they would know there had been a dog, a good dog, a dog who had led two girls to a place they needed to be. I added a new entry that morning. I added the last one I would add for a while. I sat at that wooden table in the spring light and I wrote the sentence I wanted somebody to read, a sentence for whoever came next. I wrote that the spring still ran, that the woodpile was full, that the door was true, that the blankets were folded in the chest. I wrote that I had checked the roof in March, that the chimney drew clean, that the latch on the bedroom door needed oil, but I had brought oil with me today. I wrote, if you are reading this, you are safe now. If you are reading this, you are home. If the dog finds you first, you trust the dog. A dog always knows where to go. I closed the journal. I put it back in the cedar box. I closed the lid. I set the box on the workbench where I had found it. I went out into the front room. I oiled the latch. I swept the floor. I added wood to the stack beside the porch. I did the things Della had done for 14 years, not because I had to, because I wanted to, because somebody had done it before me, and somebody would need to find it after me. And the chain of kindness does not break unless somebody chooses to break it. I would not be the one to break it. When I was done, I sat on the porch. Cody sat beside me. His leg had healed. There was a scar through the fur, a line of white that would never fully fill in. I rubbed his ears. He pushed his head into my hand. His tail thumped on the wood. He looked at me with his blue eyes, the blue of glacier water, the blue of the dog in the photograph. I said, "Hey, buddy." His tail thumped. I said, "Thank you for finding it." He licked my hand once. That was all. We walked back down the mountain in the afternoon. The path was almost gone now. By next year, you would not be able to follow it without knowing where it went. That was as it should be. The house belonged to whoever needed it. Della took us in for good. She did not call it adoption. She called it living together. But she put my name on the deed of her little house. She put Junie's name on it too. She said, "Honey, when I am gone, this house is for you and your sister. I have nobody else. I would rather it be you." I tried to argue. She said, "Adeline, I am 68 years old. Do not argue with me about my own house." I stopped arguing. Junie went back to school in January, 3rd grade, at a small elementary on the edge of town. She made a friend named Sarah within a week. Sarah had 2 dads and a tortoise. Junie thought this was the most exciting thing that had ever happened to her. She came home on her first day and she said, "Addie, there are kids who have parents." I said, "Yes, baby, there are." She said, "I forgot." I said, "I know, I forget too." She said, "Are we okay?" I said, "We are okay, Bug." And we were. We were. Caleb proposed to a woman named May in June. I just want you to know, Della went into the hospital 2 years after we met her. A heart thing. The doctors caught it in time. She was home in 11 days. She made me promise to learn how to make her biscuits before something got her. I promised. I make her biscuits now. They are not as good as hers. They are pretty good. Junie is 14 now. She is taller than me. She does not let me forget that. She is a freshman at the high school. She runs cross country. She wants to be a veterinarian. She has a notebook in which she draws dogs. She draws Cody. She draws Cody a lot. Cody is 14. He is slower. He sleeps more. But he still walks to the trailhead with me twice a year, spring and fall. He still climbs the path to the cave. He still goes through that narrow opening with his white tail in the air. He still sits on the porch of the house Wendell built. He still knows where to go. He still always knows where to go. I sit there on that porch with him sometimes. The orange light coming down through the cracks in the cave ceiling, the spring water making its quiet sound against the stone, the wooden husky in the cedar box in the back room holding everything together. I think about Wendell. I think about Eleanor and Maggie. I think about my mother and my father. I think about a man I never met who built a house for a woman he never met. And the woman who came was a 22-year-old girl with a sick sister and $11 in her pocket. And the dog who led her was the spitting image of the dog who had led him. I am not a religious woman, but my mother was. And my mother used to say, Adeline, the Lord does not always answer the way we expect him to. Sometimes he sends a dog. I used to laugh at her. I do not laugh anymore. This story is for whoever needs to hear it. If you are tired, if you are running, if you are holding a child or a memory or a small wet animal against your chest and you do not know where you are going, if the world has taken something from you that you cannot get back, listen, somewhere somebody built a house for you. They built it a long time ago. They did not know your name. They did not know your face. They only knew you might come. Somewhere an old woman is keeping the light on. Somewhere a dog is waiting at the edge of a clearing for somebody to follow him into the trees. You only have to walk a little farther. You only have to trust the dog. You only have to step through the door. The house knows you are coming. The house has always known. And when you sit down by the fire for the first time, when you put down the bag you have been carrying, when you take off the wet boots and the wet jacket and the weight of every mile you have walked, you will hear it. The only thing any of us ever really needs to hear at the end of any night after any storm. You are home now. You can rest. You are home.